My name is Myriam, and I work in digital marketing. I'm not a dev, and the reason I'm here today is to talk about UX and usability and how it fits in all of our worlds. So, why am I speaking today? Well, the first thing is I'm genuinely convinced that simple user testing is something that we should all be doing, simply because it means debugging a design. So it's part of all of our jobs to make sure that it's human-friendly. The second reason is Martin Neumann, who actually helped out on this conference, convinced me to come and talk to you guys. I can't say I'm very confident. I don't belong to this world, and the mic doesn't work very well. But if I do a good job and you're happy, genuinely tell him thank you, because he's encouraging a lot of us to come and speak. So how do you define user experience? Well, there's a lot of ways to define it, but in one sentence, it's the totality of an end user's perception as they interact with a product or a service. What do we mean by perception? Well, it's how they feel while they use it. It's their impression of efficiency, of effectiveness, and the quality of the relationship they have with the entity that published the application or the website. So, why is it important? Well, because you should think of your users' needs as being part of your product goals. This may not seem very intuitive at first, but when you consider that you make things for people first, not just for the sheer pleasure of programming, then it starts to make sense, and you can see some tangible benefits. So what are they? Well, the first one is increased customer satisfaction. Why does this matter for you? Well, you're going to have less complaints, less requests for useless features, less communication that leads you nowhere because people are happy using your product. Second point is loyalty. So from a marketing standpoint and from a business standpoint, we have something that we call lifetime value. How much can a customer bring us in terms of money and in terms of reputation over the lifetime of the relationship we have with them? Why is this important here? Well, when people love a product, they stay loyal and they recommend it. So once again, the bottom line for you is to make things that people use. Loyalty is very important in that context. It's also been proven by many studies that the more time people spend on your app or your website, the more money they tend to spend. So once again, your bottom line is really helped by the user experience. And this one is very, very important to me. Less resources wasted. What do I mean by less resources wasted? Simply that you save in terms of time, physical resources, patience, and human beings that work on this. And that's very, very important. I don't enjoy working for nothing, and I'm sure you don't either. So having things scrapped in the middle of it just because user needs were not thought about when this started is very frustrating. Simple introduction as to what user needs are. So starting from the bottom, the main one is it functional? So does it work as programmed? Is it reliable? Is it easy to just handle, make sure that it does what I need it to do? Is it usable? And that's what we are mainly going to be talking about today. Can it be used without difficulty? Is it reliable? Easy to use? Works like I planned? And is it pleasurable? Is this so memorable that I'm actually going to tell my friends about it and tell them that it saved me time or money or made a wait for the trains to come very enjoyable? So let's look at how UX and usability fit together. UX is broad and holistic, whereas usability is narrow and focused. What does this mean for you? Well, user experience is you're trying to catch the intangible. It's about satisfaction, enjoyment, pleasure, fun, and value. In your everyday work, although you aim for it, it's kind of hard to grasp and say, I'm doing this because, I'm going to bring enjoyment to people. Whereas usability, it kind of resonates because it's about, is it effective? Is it efficient? Can I learn this fast as a user? Can you prevent errors? So let's say that I'm trying to do something stupid. You already thought about my human behavior and you're letting me know, hey, don't go that direction. And is it memorable? So memorable is, do I have to relearn this every single time I open up the website? My main problem is that oftentimes when I work in dev centers, this is how some people see usability. So it's a sad state. I ended up actually talking to somebody and telling them, if you do this, your user is going to end up on a 404 page. The person just looked at me dead in the eye and said, well, if the user does this, he or she is stupid, and I don't make websites for stupid people. That's great, and you still can't get the human part right, though. So, before you start anything, keep in mind 3 laws. So they are taken from a book that's called Don't Make Me Think. It's by Steve Krug. I'm really attached to this book, A, because it's easy to read and the guy hates writing books. B, is because I have a strange relationship with that book. It's the book that I see on every single one of my boss's shelves that they've actually never read. They just feel that they should own it. So here's how to boil it down. Rule number 1, don't make me think. What does it mean? Well, I downloaded, I don't play video games, so just heads up. I downloaded an app. I wanted to play a game from a cartoon I love. And they had an onboarding experience that was 7 minutes long. Okay, I don't need 7 minutes to figure out how Peter Griffin is going to get through the town on a drunken rampage. I really don't need that. So I gave up. Sorry, you made me think. Mindless and unambiguous clicks. So what do they mean? Well, I don't know about you, but I keep hearing, oh, well, I don't want my page to be in there. You understand it's important because the VP said that this page should be on level 3 because more than 3 clicks and the user won't find it. No, that's not how it works. It's what I would call a rule of thumb. So you have the rule of thumb, which is this, mindless and unambiguous clicks, and the rule of thumb, you set it at 3 because you know that people are going to just to mess around with it, so you try to scope them. The reality is, if it's easy for me to find my way through, I don't mind how many clicks I have to do. It makes sense to my journey. And the third one, and seeing my background, I hate to say it, but it's true, let the words go. So normally, to position yourself very well in search engine rankings, you need at least 300 words in a page. However, letting the words go means cutting that in half and cutting what remains in half. Why? Because if you can't explain it to me in 1 sentence, you lost my attention, and it's probably not worth being explained. So you can have 300 words explaining different aspects of what you're doing, but you can't tell me that you need 300 words to explain your value proposition. That doesn't work for a user. Moving on, we have what we call the usability pyramid, and I made a conscious effort in this talk to not have pyramids all over the place, so I thought that a rainbow cake would be amazing. With that in mind, we start with useful. Does it do something that people need in their lives? Something they need done? Is it learnable? So can I figure out easily how to use it? Is it intuitive? Is it memorable? Once again, do I have to relearn this every single time? Effective? Does it get the job done? Efficient? Does it do it in a reasonable amount of time? And this used to be the basics of that pyramid. But as we advance in the web, we've added 2 more things. Is it desirable and is it delightful? And that makes a huge difference. Why? Because something delightful and something desirable, I'm going to be talking to my friends about it because I enjoyed it or because I think they really, really should have this in their lives. Another one of my problems is the myth of the average user. I like the fact that the average user is always used to say something that we mean. Oh, you want to put sliders all over? Well, you know, the average user doesn't really respond to sliders, so, well, no. I mean, I'm trying to understand what an average user is, so I did what most of us do. I Googled. And I decided to use a trusted authority to talk to you about the average user. So Urban Dictionary defines the average user as somebody who loves Harry Potter, hates Twilight, prefers Google to Yahoo, and plays with their socks during church. Awesome. So if you want to talk about the average user, that's great. That's that person. If you want to talk to the rest of us humans, you have to move a little beyond that. Why? Because experience is deeply personal and subjective. We experience things in a different way as humans. So each experience is greatly affected by our past experiences, our personal references and preferences, our mood, and various other factors. What does it mean tangibly? Well, good web design isn't a matter of figuring out what people like. If you're trying to do that, you are going to waste half of your project time and come up with something that pleases no one because you're trying to please everybody by thinking of the average user. So with that in mind, and you got a little preview, let's think about the average user. The next time you develop something, are you trying to make it for that guy? Because, warning, this average user may not really reflect reality. Now that you have this down, let's play a little game. I mean, it's a game that can be played in large meetings, as you know. Bullshit bingo is a great way to get familiar with some of the jargon. Jargon 101, you get to hear about UX, UXD, CX, UI, IXD. What do they actually mean? Well, here's a quick breakdown. UI is user interface, UX is user experience, UXD is user experience design, IXD is interaction design, and CX, which is one of the new ones that, well, not a new one for me, but that a lot more people are talking about, is customer experience. So how do they all fit with each other? User experience design is the process of designing for the all-encompassing user-focused aspects of any system. So it's a bit complicated to just boil down into a simple sentence, but it's basically what makes things work properly when I'm trying to do something in your app or on your website. Customer experience, well, it's the product of an interaction between an organization and a customer over the duration of their relationship. So in marketing, we have a fancy term. It's called the conversion funnel. So what is the conversion funnel? And I didn't put it, once again, in a neat little pile to explain it to you because that's not your job and it's rather boring. Let's look at it. As a user, as a customer, you oftentimes become aware that you have a problem and you're trying to fix it. So you're going to go discover the solutions. That's great. So then, we managed to attract you by presenting what we do, what we enjoy about our product, what we think you'll enjoy about the product. And then hopefully we can cultivate this relationship with you and push you to first purchase, use it, but then you're not done. You're not done. You're never done. Why? Simply because advocacy is another problem for us. If you like the product, we hope that we don't have to start this onboarding with someone else. We hope that you like it so much that you're going to do the human thing, which is try to help other people in your life and say, hey, I'm using this and this is good. And here's why CX and UX are not interchangeable. I keep hearing people exchanging all this jargon to mean the same thing, and it's not. Just like user experience is a large set and usability is a subset, well, customer experience is the all-encompassing thing, and user experience within that context is just a component. So when you've been a fan of Coca-Cola since you can walk, it's customer experience. It's not about how happy you are using their cans or how happy you are using their website. It's really about the whole entire ecosystem. Same thing with UI and UX. They're not interchangeable. So keep that in mind. And this is a very minimalistic illustration of this. So there are plenty of these images floating around the web. There's actually a Tumblr dedicated to all the stupid metaphors that can happen. I chose this one simply because it makes sense when I talk to you today. User interface is what users interact with, and UX is how they feel while they're doing it. So you're not actually consuming the spoon. You're consuming the entire experience of having breakfast at your table because for once you have time and the kids are not screaming. User interface, when we look at it this way, it's the space where interaction occurs between humans and machines. So granted, once again, it's a spoon, but for you, think of your user interface the next time you take a look at it. Not from the standpoint of, does it meet all the requirements? But hey, could I actually take this and have someone else use this without having to explain it to them? And that makes a huge difference. Interaction design is something a bit different. It's making the connection between a device, the interface, and the user. So it's something that adds that little extra. What do I mean by that little extra? It's what brings a human element that makes technology pleasant to interact with. And that's very, very important. That's actually the main distinctions originally, not now, but originally between personal computers and Macs. Personal computers were developed with business in mind. You had to go to a training, you had to go through manuals to get stuff done. Macs were meant to be enjoyable because they were oriented to consumers, B2C. So that's why Steve Jobs' experience in calligraphy was nice, because it's pretty, it's design, it's something that I enjoy interacting with, it's something I'm proud to own. Now, we have come a long way for this, but it's very, very interesting when you do a sociology in internet and technology to see that these things emerge that way. And once again, it's the human element that shaped some of the stuff we inherit today. So to recap, once again, bad metaphor because we can pick this apart, but the reality is the UI, the bottle is very pretty and it does what it needs to do. The user experience, well, we thought about the bottle. It was good for a good 100 years, but let's make it a little better and think of the experience. But the reality is usability. The reality is, doesn't matter how much we think about this, we engineer this properly, it means you're still going to end up with ketchup on the table. So that's what I want to talk about today and how you guys can make a difference in this. Simply because you're at the end line. You catch everything that's been forgotten by a lot of us. So bring a little more human in what you do. How can you go about that? Well, you can actually do usability testing, and there are some best practices. Now, if you've ever heard of usability, you are oftentimes aware that it takes between 50K and 100K to do a test, and they do that in special laboratories, and they recruit people that test this out, and some of them actually have cameras on top of their heads while they do things. A friend of mine does that. It's rather amazing. You get to learn a lot of things. However, I think that it's not the right idea we should have about usability because everybody can do it. You can do it very fast. It can fit an agile mode and still bring insights. You don't need to schedule this weeks in advance and try to get everybody's attention. So the 4 documents you need to get this done is personas, an empathy map, user scenarios, and a customer journey map. Personas are the fictional personalities based on research that you use. So they are basically the placeholder for your ideal user during the entire design process. How can you create them, or how can you ask for them when you're developing something? Well, there's this wonderful little website. It's called personapp.io. You can go and you can pick the hypothetical user's name. Put a face to it. So have a human element, once again, once you print it out and put it on the wall. You can integrate facts and demographics. You can integrate behaviors, needs, and goals. Why? Because sometimes the personality you're aiming for is not the guy who's going to buy it. So for example, you would talk about how they would find out about you if they're a bit younger or not, which would explain if they're not the final decision maker or not, and their behaviors. How are they going to convince the person that actually has to pay for the product that this is good, for example? So once you have that, or if this doesn't jump out to you, and if you don't know who the end user is, don't hesitate to ask for this. And if people don't have this in your company, that's a problem because, once again, you're not thinking about your user's needs before the design process, before actually developing features. Next step is empathy map. It's a tool to organize the user's thought and emotions. So, quick breakdown on how to do this. Step 1, you go on the link and you print this beautiful paper on A4 format if you can, and then you start by asking dumb questions. What do I mean by dumb questions? Open-ended ones. So instead of asking somebody, how do you use Facebook? Which implies that there is a proper way to use Facebook, that it's expected that they would know, and that you're putting pressure on them. Just ask them, what do you do on Facebook? And they're going to come up with a list of things. Just write that down. Keep asking those questions. Write down everything. It can't be yes or no. It's, once again, human interaction. So once you have these notes, you digest them in tiny little Post-its as a team to see what makes sense, to boil this down. If you can't explain it in the length of a Post-it, then it's probably not one problem, but a series of problems that you have to fix. And then you go for quantity. So once again, don't hold back and try to bring out the gems, the nuggets, everything that's going to be, making a difference. Go for quantity. Settle this down. Put all the Post-its where they belong on this map. And then chill out. What I would recommend is to take this and put it either by the bathroom, if this is the most frequented space for you, or by the coffee machine, which I think in reality is going to be where you're going to get your feedback, and get feedback from people around the office. Once you have that, you actually have, a bigger picture, and you can start defining your mission. So the mission is the because. Why do we do this? We would do this because. Once you have that, you're ready to go and move on to user scenarios. So user scenarios are that thing that bridges the gap between the persona and the final goal you have for your user. It's the story. It's the how do they get there? What were they looking for? Are they doing are they on your website and then watching TV and actually have something open on their other computer? What are they doing? What's their behavior? So factors you can consider when you try to create this is their behavior, their motivation, the environment they're doing whatever they're doing, what you want them to do in, and any external factors. So external factors could be, let's say hypothetically, you are trying to breach the market in China and you want to bring an application to English speakers in China. Well, an external factor is that they may or may not speak Chinese and they're stuck in China. And finally, the customer map. So I'm not going to go into details as to this one because it entails a lot of elements that you can see here. So what are they aware? What is the pricing? What is the purchase? But mainly what you would have to retain is that it combines the user's personality, so their persona, with how they're interacting with your site or application. So that's the user scenario. And each stage of that journey will have different emotional progressions, okay? So that doesn't mean I start off wanting your app and being super excited about it. I know for a fact that there's some stuff that I had to use, like a timesheet, that I started hating right off the bat. I hated doing that. And then when you see that it's actually useful and that you can pull out really nice charts to tell certain people, well, you see, I have been working, then it changes your life a little bit. It doesn't mean that it gets easier, but at least as a human, you're attached to it because it brings you value. Now to help you, we're going to be going through 10 usability guidelines for web apps because I want you to leave with some actionable insights to this. So, with that in mind, let's get started. And I'm sorry you're going to have to pay attention to me for a little while because these are not easy and I tend to speak fast, so either take a picture or listen to me. You should have a consistent and standardized user interface. Why? Because if things are not where I expect them to be, or if you're trying to reinvent the wheel between your website and your application, for example, or between what I expect from a website as a user and what you're delivering, I'm going to get very confused. It's just going to create friction, it's going to make me waste time, and then bring about bad emotions. Guide the user. So there are some cues that you can give to people. For example, if they have to move down, I don't know if you've noticed the subtle little arrows that keep pointing down in the design. That's a cue. But you can also use labels, you can use different types of elements to guide your user and say, hey, I'm nudging you in the right direction. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just nudging you because it makes sense within your experience. Make call to actions buttons, so interactive objects, obvious. One of the main problems when you're in a marketing meeting, and I hope that you don't get stuck in those, is they want buttons everywhere. They want conversions. They want everybody to click everywhere. That's great. The reality is, if you put buttons everywhere, I'm going to get confused as to what I'm supposed to click. I don't even know some of the stuff is clickable. It doesn't work. So make sure that if you have one big thing you want your user to do, you're hoping that they're going to do after this entire journey, that it's obvious that they can click and move forward. Give feedback to the user as to how they're doing. I can't tell you how many times I've actually sent something over that I was required, and there's no message telling me I've done good. There's no message going, yes, we received it. So I keep sending it over and over and over again. So a real life experience outside of the web is when you keep sending things to a printer and it doesn't print out, and then you restart it and it prints out 5 times. That's how some users feel when they use your applications. Never ever have a user repeat anything that they already said. So this is mainly in the sign-up process or the checkout process or things where you need fundamental information to move forward. If you can copy this or pre-fill this or whatever magical technical solution you have for this, go for it. Just go for it, please. Always have default values in forms. Why? Because, for example, when I'm trying to fill out a zip code, for a long time I lived in Canada, and in Canada you can't use a zip code without a space in it. But originally I'm French, so my zip code, it doesn't have spaces in it, so my habits are to never ever space it. And I always have to go back and actually re-enter it because I've done it wrong. If my eye catches that the zip code has a space in it, I'm actually going to make the effort and replicate it. That's why you have to guide me. Explain how the information will be used. And that one I'm hoping you can catch because it irritates the heck out of me as a user. And as a marketing person, I'm pretty goddamn sure what you're going to do with that information, and I still don't want to give it to you, so you better convince me. Why? Because if I'm asking you to give your email to just get, let's say, a white paper, I know you're going to hound me forever, eternity, trying to sell me things now that I've downloaded this. No, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to make up a fake one. And then I'm going to realize that you actually only send the white paper if I've given it my email, because that's the way your system works, and then I've screwed myself out of white paper. So if you tell me, hey, we promise not to share your email, but we really need it to send you this document, I'm going to give it to you. Don't offer any world-ending buttons. So, short of Facebook, and even with Facebook, it's really difficult to delete your account. Don't give me an option as a user to wipe my entire history with you or my entire data. Because, well, I remember back in the day, I've done this to my brother. I completely erased his progress in video games just out of spite. I was able to do that in one click, huh? So don't do that. Users, they think they know what they want up until they realize the impact of what happened. So maybe I just wanted to erase one thing and I didn't have an option, so I went for the whole shebang. And then I'm very confused, and you can't get it back because it's been permanently deleted, and then there's friction, and then you lose a user. So, tell me if I've done something right. Tell me if I've done something wrong. Catch my eye. Don't frustrate me. That should be easy. Make it clear. Hey, you're on the right path. Or, yeah, almost. Keep going. Include a clear visual hierarchy in navigation. What does that mean? My content, I'm scanning it. This is the information highway. When you drive on the highway, do you pay attention to all the commercials that are on the side? No. You're just scanning and zooming by. Same thing here. I should be able to do the simple test. I should be able to take anyone's laptop that's open on a web page, close my eyes without seeing what's on it, open them, hold it like this, and in 30 seconds know exactly where I am, what I'm doing, and what's going on, and which part of the country this is, or which part of the world this is. I haven't forgotten about the mobile people. So, what do? First thing is, well, if it's in your interest, which I think it is, make sure it works on all phones. Why? Well, unless you just want to be an Android snob, for example, you can, or an iOS snob, that's fine. If you want to be known as the iOS app, okay. Otherwise, it's going to create frustrations. Let's say that I'm switching from iOS to Android and I love your app and I can't install it, or the experience is so horrible in that version that I just don't want to use it anymore. Give incentives for sharing and purchase. Why is this important? Well, it's very, very difficult when you have an application like this to convince people to interact. The engagement rates are what makes people in the business end rabid. They just want to know how many people are using it, how many people are sharing it. So if you make it easy and you give incentives for sharing and purchasing, you actually improve the user experience. Don't go overboard and ask me with a pop-up every 5 seconds, but, think about the fact that I may want to share this once in a while. Keep usability and conversion in mind. So conversion is, the bottom line, conversion is not about money. It's about getting people to do the things they're supposed to do on your app. Keep that in mind, never lose sight of it. And for usability, I know that most people think it's for blind people. Let me give you a tip. When you're running out of battery and you're putting things at the lowest setting, that's also a usability issue. So you want to test quickly if your app works? Go in a crowded mall, put the light at the minimum, and try to get things done on that app. Good luck. Let me know if you pass the test. That means you've taken the usability into account, at least step 1. Navigation should be easy. That goes as saying. You see the picture here. Most of us are trying to do things with one thumb, like one. And usually that thumb is even challenged because we're trying to do 30,000 different things. So if you keep that easy, it's going to go well. Offer relevant content. So you have an opportunity as an app. The user actually shares data with you. You can make highly personalized, relevant content to them. And what I mean by content is not necessarily the content marketing or the native advertisement or whatever. No, give me information, give me stuff I actually would want to use. That makes sense to me. Give me personalized alerts. Let's say that it's a thing where you track how much exercise you've done. Say, hey, this month you've been a bit lower. Maybe you can catch up. You still have a week left. That's highly relevant. Also a little bit creepy, but, I'll still work out. You should also go for aesthetics. So aesthetics is really not my world, actually, but make it nice, make it pretty, make it enjoyable. As we talked in that pyramid, delightful has been added. Is it pleasurable? Is it something that I would enjoy just having there? I have a few designer friends of mine. They actually are so design focused. They will color code all the applications they have on their phones, so it makes it pretty and the experience is nice. And it's rather nice, I have to admit. I find it absolutely mind-boggling, but there are people like this that react really, really strongly to these visual cues. Okay, so we talked about the relevant content, and give all the information I need to make the purchase. I know, once again, this seems like a business thing, but if I don't have the specs of what I'm buying, or I'm not sure, I'm hesitating between two headphones, they look super similar, but one would be amazing for work, and the other one would actually leak sound all over the place if I were in the subway. Great for studio environment, but not for everyday life. I'm gonna get freaked out. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to buy. That means I have to leave your app to find the information. That means I may not return. Autofill customer data. We talked about this one for websites as well. If you can make my life easier, do so. I've given you the right to access my information. Design for quick movement. So this goes back to the thumb, but it's also the fact that we are so used to swiping all over the place, and when things take a while, we actually get confused. If it takes forever to load on my phone, I'm convinced that's either broken, or the Wi-Fi doesn't work, or my connectivity is bad, or something went wrong, when it's not the case. It's just that you didn't think about my use and how I would perceive this. So this one is a bit specific, and I wanted to talk about it really quickly. It's really nice to say, you know, hey, usability, we can test. There's video recording for desktops. You can be in the other room, and it's very, very developed for websites. For applications, it's kind of a barren wasteland until you start looking into it. So here's a quick tip. You can do usability testing through video. So I know that with Android, it's a bit easier. iOS, I'm not as informed, but if you have a solution, that's great. Don't hesitate to let me know. And now that I've said all that should be done, I want to talk about all the stuff that we don't do. Some of the mistakes that happen. Having an inconsistent approach to common functions. If I, as a user, expect things to be on the right when I'm searching for things, so the search should be on the right and should have a button and should have this, because that's the way I've been trained, and you're trying to tell me that I have to untrain myself and figure things out, guys, unless it's really, really earth-shattering and you're going to change the face of humanity forever, don't do it. Leverage my expectations. Use them to your advantage. You're making this easier on yourself, and you're making this easier on me as a user. Ambiguous error messages are something that is a huge problem. So sometimes it will say just, could not send because file missing. And then you're realizing that you had to upload 3 different files and you don't know which one it is. It doesn't tell you. Okay, so I did something wrong, but I don't know what. And as a human, I'm pretty sure that most of you have had this feeling of, I have done something wrong, this is broken, I don't know why. There's nothing more miserable than that feeling. And you can avoid it very, very easily. Giving users too many competing options is also a problem. If your options that you offer are not mutually exclusive, that means that I get to choose things without being confused, then there's a problem. And when companies talk to themselves instead of talking to their customers or their users, this often happens. Have you been on a bank website recently? Most of them will offer you 30,000 types of accounts that all look like a checking account, and you don't know what the difference is. Try to avoid that. Having a lengthy registration process is also an issue. And when I say lengthy, I don't mean as, once again, the myth of the average user, that the average user wants to spend this much time filling it out. No. It has to make sense for the user, not be lengthy for the user. Explanation. If I want to sign up for a process, let's say I want to use canva.com to make beautiful pictures and add stuff to it. One click with Google Plus or with Twitter or whatever, I expect to be in. I don't want to give you too much information, I just want to make an image. Now, I've had a client, she actually does something amazing. She takes care of people that have had accidents. I mean, neurological or physical, and she does therapy for them. And you can sign up for this clinic over the web by filling out a registration process. Is it going to be lengthy as hell? Yes. She needs to know what happened, what is wrong with you so that she can help you. This goes into great detail because it's medical. However, it saves everybody a lot of time because you get to do this from the comfort of your own home, figure stuff out, fill it out, and it makes sense. It would be lengthy for you if you have no problem. But for somebody trying to get this, it helps them a lot because otherwise they would have to go through multiple offices to try to get the right doctor to actually prescribe going to this lady's place. So once again, make sure that it makes sense and make sure that it's not too long. If she was asking you details about your mortgage, for example, that would be irrelevant and too long. Small clickable areas on mobile. I don't know how many of you have managed to click on an ad by accident and then are followed by the ad because we retarget. But keep in mind, you have a thumb. This is your fattest finger. Try to make your application or website, and anything that you do, keep in mind the thumb. It has to be easily clickable, and it has to be, remember, unambiguous, my clicks, huh? I have to know exactly where I'm going. This is the last one. This is the largest one, especially once you get started testing for usability. Blaming negative feedback on fear of change or whatever not is a huge problem. I understand you spent your time designing this. I understand you're proud of it. That doesn't mean that it's user-friendly. Also, I would like to bring attention to the fact that a unicorn has just walked in. And this wasn't planned, but enjoy it fully. So, blaming negative feedback on fear of change is not going to help your product. You have to listen to your users. So, a really good example for me of this is the fact that Twitter just changed their, they changed their stars to hearts. This is actually polarizing. Why? Because a subset of the population was using this as a specific thing, which is setting aside some articles they wanted to read. I've been doing this for years. I want to read something, I put a star on it. And then I started noticing that the change actually had switched, that some people were favoriting some of the stuff I said, which was like cucumber sandwich, but it was as a way to thank me for the interaction, to show appreciation. It was nice, but Twitter made a choice, actually. They kind of alienated one part of their user base by going to the heart because they wanted to reflect the second use. And they've actually had a lift in interactions via this feature of 20 or 25%. So they did something that they actually wanted to achieve. They didn't go, okay, people are unhappy or etc. They actually studied this. What they didn't think about is the fact that it's not always fear of change. I'm unhappy about the heart situation because I don't feel like putting a heart on an ISIS article, even though I want to be informed about it. Physically, as a user, I don't feel good about that, sorry. But once again, it's, the 80-20. The majority wins, so the hearts make sense. I'm going to find a different way to use that feature. Fine. But if this is not your case, if you're blaming everything on the user and their fear of change, you're doing something wrong. What about digital analytics? So a lot of people come to me because actually I'm more into the digital analytics end of things. I love that. And they tell me, I don't need to test for usability. I have all the numbers right there. I know exactly what people are doing. It's true. It's absolutely true. So you get to see what people are doing on your website. But usability, it's the why they're doing things on your website. So I've found things and I wonder, okay, so I see that the what? People are clicking on things that are not clickable. Actually, it's kind of a blank space. I'm confused as to why they're clicking. That goes in my report. The why? Well, the website was made in such a way that when you checked it out on tablet, it actually looked like this was supposed to be clickable. I would have never found out the why without usability. How to get started. So great tips for this is I tried to compile some cheap tools. So there's 8 tools that you can go about. And there's plenty more. Huh? It's just, this is a slide. I'm a bit limited. I didn't know it was going to be this big. I would have put something else otherwise. But you can get started with heat maps. Crazy Egg is great. It's $9 a month. Optimizely is an A/B testing. So if you actually have arguments internally and you have enough traffic to test certain things, go for it. You can. A 5-second test is to capture first impressions for free. And Qualaru is the voice of customer. It's that thing that pops up and asks you for your advice or survey to gain feedback. It's what we call voice of customer. So actually customers that really, really want to tell us about this. Usability is an all-in-one solution that gets it all done. Feedback Army is, well, it gives you feedback, but via Amazon Turk, so it's a question of ethics if you want to use it or not. User Feel is great if you're like me, playing with multiple languages, not just English. And Try My UI is a usability testing tool, so you get to see the user interface. People are going to play around in it. Why should you test? Because usability testing is the killing field of cherished notions. There is nothing more horrible than actually standing in a room and seeing through video, or seeing you in the room, seeing a user trying to do things on your application that you thought would be easy and you can't get it right. So this can go three ways. You actually just want to call the person stupid, or you want to call yourself stupid and bash your head against the wall, but you can't do that because you're, good company. Or you literally just want to take their hand and move the mouse for them. None of this is right. That means you did something wrong. But that human emotion, the first time it happens to you, it's really enlightening. And it makes you pay attention to the rest. And then you don't become desensitized the more you do this. You actually get better at predicting what's going to happen. And you get better at thinking about your users' needs in terms of product goals. So why should you test? Because there is a difference between what people say they do and what they actually do. Why is that? Well, remember the how do you use Facebook and what do you do on Facebook? That's the entire difference. You ask me, how do I use Facebook? I'm going to look at you, and depending on how you're dressed, depending on how you talk to me, depending on why I'm here, I'm going to try to say what I think you expect me to say to make you happy, because I'm a good little human and I want to keep this interaction going. Is this going to help you in the long run? No. This is why if everybody is raving about your meatloaf at home, don't open a restaurant thinking that everybody's going to come to see you. It doesn't work that way. You also get the opportunity to ask why people are doing certain things or why things are not working. So this is a great opportunity to make your product better, or to realize that your product was actually not centered on the user's needs, and just pivot while you still have time. It removes the designer bias. Just because you made something doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody else. But in French, there's this expression, la tête dans le guidon. So when you bicycle, you're so close to the handlebars that you actually don't see the road. This happens to all of us. We're all biased. So let's take an opportunity and see something else. Another thing is, this all can be done on prototypes. So if you don't have, let's say, a mobile application ready, do the test on paper. Just do paper prototypes. And it can be cheap and quick, and adapt to whatever methods you're using to develop things. So if you're on Agile, you can do your test once a month and try to fit everything in sprints. It works. If you're not working that way and you're working waterfall, well, just go for a gigantic test. But keep in mind, testing one user is better than testing none. Testing 50 users at the end of this whole entire process is actually worse than testing one at the beginning. So before you do anything, keep that in mind and how it's going to impact you. And that's about it. So thank you very much for your time. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm right here. And I hope this actually helped you gain a few more insights.